The void has always been silent, but there is a silence that carries weight, an emptiness that presses against the soul until even the strongest falter. When the great devourer draws near, that silence becomes a shroud over entire star systems. It is not the natural absence of sound or the simple emptiness of space. It is the psychic suppression of thought itself, a suffocating darkness that smothers every spark of hope. This is the shadow in the warp, the first warning that a world will soon be unmade. Astropaths scream in their towers as the connection to the Imperium fractures, their minds unraveling under the weight of something alien and bottomless. Across the sector, the chorus of the Astronomicon fades into static, leaving ships blind and stranded. Administratum scribes, trying to send desperate pleas for reinforcement, find their words choked mid-sentence, their psychic couriers lost in the tide. Priests, once firm in their sermons of faith, feel an ache in their skulls and a whisper that their emperor's light no longer reaches them. In this oppressive mental storm, paranoia festers, and despair becomes the unspoken law of the people. On the afflicted worlds, citizens sense it in their dreams long before the first enemy spore pierces the atmosphere. They wake drenched in sweat, unable to recall the horrors they glimpsed behind their eyelids. Farmers in the fields speak of the livestock that suddenly panic and claw themselves apart. Children, too young to name fear, clutch at their parents' clothes as if the air itself had turned hostile. Entire hives slow to a crawl as machines malfunction without cause, servitors twitch in madness, and overseers find their orders followed with hollow dead eyes. No one can explain it, but everyone feels it, the sense that something vast and hungry is watching from just beyond the stars. The first to break are always those who live closest to the void. The ship crews, the voidfarers, the miners who toil on asteroids and dead moons, these are the ones who stare at the night sky every day, and they see when the stars seem wrong. A faint blot here, a distortion there. The void loses its familiar pattern, and the constellations that once guided generations are twisted into shapes of gnashing maws and writhing limbs. Void ships, even those far from the front line, report their Geller fields flickering, not from warp storms, but from an interference that feels older and colder than chaos itself. When the Administratum finally notices, it is already too late. At first, there are only reports of astropaths suffering seizures, a minor matter buried in bureaucratic red tape. Then entire planetary communication grids fall silent. The voices of other worlds vanish from the ether, replaced by static and psychic screams. Some officials insist it is a local malfunction, while others whisper the truth no one wants to face, that the Tyranids have come. By the time the High Lords of Terra hear of it, the Devourer is already feeding. By the time the Imperium mobilizes its fleets, hundreds of billions of lives are marked for consumption. For the ordinary citizen, the coming of the shadow is not announced by official decree or marching soldiers. It is felt in the marrow of their bones. A man goes to his work shift in the manufactorum and finds the cogitators slow, their machine spirits wailing in silence. A mother prays to the emperor in her home shrine, and her candle flame gutters as though choked by unseen breath. Across entire continents, the population begins to slow, their instincts screaming for them to hide, though they know not from what. They cannot name the Tyranids, many do not even believe such a thing could exist, and yet every soul knows without doubt that death is on its way. When the void grows restless, the skies begin to change. The natural auroras and star fields give way to disturbances, shadows moving against no source of light, drifting in unnatural arcs. The moon glows faint and sickly, its face obscured by a haze not born of any atmosphere. Planetary defense forces look upward through their auspex scanners and find anomalies they cannot categorize, shapes that bend signals into loops and smear across pict feeds like smudged oil. Officers order their troops to remain calm, but their words crack in their throats. The people whisper that the angels of death, the emperor's chosen, will come. They say the Astra Militarum will fill the skies with steel, that the Emperor's wrath will scour whatever comes. Yet as the days drag on and the silence deepens, faith begins to falter. For in the grim darkness of the far future, there are no quick saviors. Reinforcements arrive only when the toll of death has already been counted. A world caught in the shadow must fight its terror alone, clinging to scraps of faith as the unseen predator circles closer. The silence soon becomes suffocating. In the absence of astropathic whispers, the galaxy feels smaller, more isolated. Even those who have never spoken to a Psyker feel its absence, as if a great cosmic heartbeat has faltered. And then the dreams grow worse. Planetary governors find themselves waking in the night, their minds filled with alien images, skittering claws, endless teeth, oceans of bodies crushed beneath tide after tide of living hunger. Children wail in unison across hive districts, their minds more sensitive to the psychic pulse. The ecclesiarchy interprets it as a trial of faith, urging the people to redouble their prayers. But prayers cannot stop what is already in motion, and somewhere beyond the rim of sight, the hive fleet stirs. Thousands of bioships, vast organisms larger than cities, drift silently through the void. They do not communicate, they do not boast, they do not falter. They only advance. Their shadows stretch across the warp, smothering every thought, drowning out the astronomician's guiding light. They are hunger incarnate, patient, and unstoppable. To them, the worlds of man are nothing but fodder for the swarm. Oceans will become fuel, mountains will be ground to dust, and every living soul will be unmade to feed the endless tide. On the planet below, the air grows heavy. Servitors gibber nonsense as their augmetic minds overload. Priests who once spoke with fire now stutter and doubt. Soldiers dream of running battles they have not yet fought, their bodies waking with the exhaustion of conflicts still to come. Fear spreads faster than any contagion, weakening the defenses before a single shot has been fired. The shadow in the warp has done its work, softening the prey, breaking their will, making them ready to be consumed, and yet, perhaps the cruelest truth of all is that many never realize what is happening until it is too late. They mistake the unease for local unrest, the failed signals for technical fault, the nightmares for imagination. But the veterans of the Imperium know better. They know that when the stars grow dim and the silence becomes too loud, it can only mean one thing. The great devourer has set its gaze upon them, and there is no escape from the hunger that follows. The first signs of the enemy are not always visible, but when they come, they descend like a sickness upon the land. The day begins like any other. The workers march to the manufactoria, the priests chant their sermons, and the hive cities grind with the ceaseless monotony of survival. But then the sky begins to bruise. Clouds form that are not clouds, moving against the wind, growing thicker with each hour. The sun burns weaker, its light muted by a haze that spreads from horizon to horizon. Citizens look upward and feel unease gnawing at their stomachs, unable to name the dread but knowing instinctively that the world has changed. It begins with the spores. They fall silently, drifting from the heavens like motes of dust. At first no one sees them. They are too small, too subtle, filtering through the atmosphere and embedding themselves in the soil. Farmers notice that their crops turn black at the roots, that the water in their troughs tastes metallic and wrong. Livestock sicken, their bellies swelling, their hides splitting open as chittering things crawl from within. The priests call it a test of faith. The medici call it an unexplained contagion. But soon there is no denying it. The ground itself is infected, reshaped by something alive, something alien. Forests turn unnatural shades, their leaves hardening into chitin plates, their roots pulsing as though with veins. Rivers grow sluggish, their waters thick with slime that resists purification. The air takes on a bitter tang, filling the lungs with a taste of iron and rot. Those who breathe it too long cough blood, their eyes yellowing as alien microbes rewrite their very flesh. Even the buildings are not safe. Hive-hab blocks find their lower levels coated in creeping fungal growth, walls sweating with secretion that eats through plasteel like acid. Entire manufactoria are abandoned as the machinery corrodes in hours, their sacred machine spirits silenced forever. The defenders of the Imperium are always first to notice the truth. The Astra Militarum commanders scan their auspex and see anomalies approaching from orbit, objects too vast to be meteors and too irregular to be ships of man. The tech adepts whisper prayers over failing instruments, their auguries filled with static and distortion. They warn of masses descending slowly, wrapped in organic shells, shedding fragments like diseased skin as they fall through the void. The officers know then what they face, though none dare speak it aloud. For to name the Tyranids is to admit that death itself is at hand. Fear spreads faster than any plague. The hives close their gates, sealing the lower levels and cutting off millions who cannot afford refuge. The nobility retreat to their spire-top mansions, surrounding themselves with guards and chanting priests. The middle halves erupt into chaos as gangs fight for food, for water, for a way upward into safety that does not exist. In the underhive, entire districts vanish, their inhabitants cocooned and devoured by alien growths that expand faster with every passing hour. Across the surface, the guard regiments muster, their tanks rumbling through city streets, their weapons bristling. But the men inside those tanks know the truth. No amount of las fire will stop what is coming. Then the sky tears open. The first mycetic spores rain down, massive enough to crush entire hab-blocks. They do not fall like rocks. They land with intention, slamming into the ground and splitting open to disgorge horrors. Warriors spill from their fleshy shells, gaunts in endless waves, talons slick with ichor, eyes gleaming with hunger that is not their own. They do not hesitate, they do not fear, they do not falter. They surge forward in perfect unison, each one guided by a mind greater than themselves. They do not eat yet, not directly. Their task is to kill, to sweep aside all resistance so that the true feast can begin. The guard open fire. Entire lines of laser guns light the streets, the air thick with the smell of ozone, as soldiers pour volley after volley into the tide. Heavy bolters roar, autocannons hammer, tanks unleash shells that tear the ground apart. Dozens, then hundreds of gaunts die, their bodies shredded into heaps of meat. For a moment, it feels like victory, but the swarm does not stop. For every creature that falls, 3 more take its place, climbing over their dead with blind, relentless fury. Ammunition dwindles. Men begin to break, their laser guns clattering to the ground as they flee into alleys, screaming prayers that go unanswered. Commissars execute deserters, their bolt pistols barking judgment, but even this cannot halt the rising tide of fear. In the skies, gargoyles descend like flocks of carrion birds. Their wings blot out the light, their shrieks piercing the cacophony of battle. They swoop through the ranks, tearing soldiers apart with claw and fang, dragging others screaming into the air. Anti-air turrets turn upward, spitting streams of fire, but the weapons overheat and jam as the biomass clogs their mechanisms. Flyers fall in flames, but still the swarm grows thicker, a living storm of flesh and wings. On the front lines, the first great beasts appear. Carnifexes crash through city walls, their claws tearing adamantium as though it were parchment. Their bellows shake the ground, a sound born of rage and hunger combined. Behind them come the synapse creatures, tyrants, warriors, broodlords, each one a node in the living network that binds the swarm. With them, the gaunts fight harder, their frenzy sharpened into precision. The guard fire until their barrels melt, but the beasts press on, their carapaces deflecting shot after shot. Entire platoons vanish beneath their charge, crushed to pulp in moments. The ordinary citizen sees none of this directly, not yet. They hear it instead, the pounding of claws against ferrocrete, the shrieks that echo through hive corridors, the thunder of guns that fade too quickly into silence. Families huddle in their homes, clutching icons of the emperor, whispering prayers until their throats bleed. In the spires, the nobility scream at their guards, demanding impossible protection as the walls around them tremble. In the underhive, the people vanish into tunnels, only to find the tunnels already infested, the walls slick with alien resin that pulses like muscle. Everywhere, the truth becomes inescapable. The Tyranids are here, and there is no safety left. As the hours stretch into days, the planet itself begins to change. The spores that landed first have rooted deeply now. The soil liquefies into sludge, feeding rivers of biomass that flow toward spawning pools. The forests are gone, their wood replaced by chitin spires that grow taller by the hour. Entire oceans bubble, their waters poisoned, their creatures twisted into new alien forms that crawl onto land and join the swarm. The air thickens, filled with a choking fog of spores that glows faintly under the stars. To breathe is to invite infection. To eat is to consume poison. To drink is to die slowly. The Guard continue to fight, but they fight not for victory, only for time. They call down orbital strikes, burning entire districts to ash in the hope of slowing the tide. They deploy flame tanks, bathing streets in cleansing fire. They bombard the skies with every missile they can spare. But the swarm adapts. What burns once does not burn again. What dies one way is reborn another. The swarm learns, evolves, perfects itself with every battle. The Guard commanders know they cannot win. They only hope to delay long enough for reinforcements to arrive, though deep inside they know those reinforcements will never come. And through it all, the shadow in the warp presses down heavier. Even the bravest begin to despair. Officers lose the will to command, priests lose the fire to preach, soldiers stare blankly as though already dead. Dreams become nightmares that never end, waking or sleeping. Men shoot themselves rather than face another day. Mothers smother their children to spare them the fate they know awaits. And still the swarm feeds. The world is dying, not in fire, not in sudden destruction, but in slow, inevitable consumption. Every breath of air, every drop of water, every ounce of flesh is marked. There is no hiding, no sanctuary, no hope. The great devourer has arrived, and it will not leave until nothing remains but dust. The swarm does not relent. Even as the defenders break and the cities burn, the Tyranids surge forward without pause, a tide of living nightmares that knows neither fatigue nor mercy. To the people of the Imperium, war is horror enough, but this is something else entirely. This is not war. This is consumption, a process as inevitable as the rising of the sun, a devouring of body and soul that leaves nothing untouched. On the second and third days of invasion, the planet itself becomes a feast table, and all who walk upon it are reduced to scraps. The hive cities, once bastions of civilization, begin to rot from within. In the lower levels, where light rarely touches, the infestation has spread unchecked. Walls are coated with pulsing resin, their metallic sheen lost beneath layers of flesh-like growth. Stairways collapse under the weight of alien sinew. Tunnels twist and reform as the swarm molds them into breeding chambers. Entire districts disappear overnight, cocooned beneath fleshy mounds where eggs quiver and hatch into new broods. The people trapped inside do not die quickly. They hear the chittering in the dark. They feel the resin close around them, and they scream until the resin hardens and their voices fade forever. Above, in the manufactoria, soldiers dig in. Heavy guns are mounted at windows, tank lines clog the streets, and artillery pounds the outskirts where the swarm gathers. The defenders fire until their arms ache and their throats run dry from shouting orders. They watch as the enemy dies in the thousands, the ground outside their walls littered with carcasses that writhe and split to give birth to smaller beasts. The soldiers cheer for moments, believing they are holding the line, but their cheers die when they realize the swarm is not retreating, only reshaping. The dead are absorbed, digested, and reformed into stronger, faster, deadlier forms. For the Tyranids, death is not defeat. It is only the next step toward perfection. In the skies, the battle grows worse. The Imperial Navy launches what craft remain, but against the endless gargoyle swarms and the colossal shapes of harpies and hive crones, the human pilots are but sparks in a storm. Wings are shredded by talons, cockpits torn open by fanged maws, entire squadrons vanish beneath clouds of acid that melt metal and flesh alike. Those who manage to return to their bases bring only despair in their reports. The void is lost. Orbit belongs to the swarm, and the skies are beyond saving. The shadow in the warp deepens, thickening until even the most faithful falter. Astropaths clutch their heads, their screams echoing through cathedral halls as their minds are shredded by the oppressive weight of the alien presence. Vox channels fill with static, commanders shouting into silence that no longer carries their words. Reinforcements cannot be called, cries for aid cannot escape, and the world realizes with slow, creeping dread that it stands utterly alone. The priests tell the people that the Emperor is still watching, that faith will see them through, but even their voices crack, their eyes flickering with doubt as the silence of the void presses heavier each hour. Meanwhile, the Tyranids do not merely kill, they harvest. Warriors drag the fallen into great pits, where their bodies are broken down into slurry. Gaunts feed on the dead, their bodies swelling, then shattering apart into clouds of smaller, more vicious creatures. Spored chimneys rise from the ground, belching clouds of toxins that thicken the air and make breathing a torment. Biovats bubble beneath the soil, growing fresh beasts from the genetic matter of those already slain. The swarm recycles everything, every corpse, every drop of blood, every splinter of bone. Nothing is wasted. Every death feeds the endless hunger. The people of the underhive become livestock. Entire families are herded into resin cages, their flesh softened by alien enzymes until they can no longer move. They do not die quickly. Their screams last for days as their bodies are drained of nutrients, leaving behind husks that crumble into dust. The lucky are killed outright, torn apart by talons or burned by last fire before the swarm takes them. The unlucky endure the slow dissolution of everything they are, their humanity digested piece by piece until only biomass remains. Children cry for parents who cannot answer, lovers cling to one another as their strength fades, and priests whisper prayers into the darkness, their voices trembling with fear, even as their gods remain silent. The guard fight on, as they always do. They form new lines, rally what survivors they can, and pour fire into the tide. Commissars bellow orders, executing deserters to keep the ranks intact. Super heavies roll into battle, their cannons tearing holes in the swarm large enough to swallow entire companies. Titans march, their footfalls shaking the earth, their plasma weapons turning thousands into ash with every shot. For a moment it seems as though humanity may yet hold. For a moment the swarm falters. Then the hive ships answer. From the skies fall new spores, larger and more grotesque than before. They strike with the force of meteors, opening to unleash monsters of unimaginable scale. Hierodules stride forth, their claws the size of tanks, their armored shells deflecting even Titan fire. Trigons erupt from beneath the ground, their serpentine bodies coiling through streets as they devour entire squads in seconds. Bio-Titans emerge, towering over the battlefield, their weapons vomiting torrents of acid and bioplasma that reduce regiments to steaming puddles. Against these nightmares, even the god machines of the Mechanicus falter. Titans are dragged down beneath tides of chittering forms, their armor cracked and split open as swarms pour inside to tear apart crew and machine spirit alike. The guard fight on still because they have no choice. But their lines grow thinner with every hour. Men and women who have fought for days without sleep collapse in exhaustion, only to be torn apart before they can rise again. Officers call for air support that no longer exists, for reinforcements that will never come. Faith burns low, hope dies quicker, and still the swarm advances. The realization sets in like poison. This is not a war they can win. It is not even a war they can survive. For the ordinary civilian, life has become a waking nightmare. Streets that once bustled with noise now echo with shrieks and gunfire. Food is gone, water-fouled, air itself poisonous. Families starve in their homes, too afraid to venture outside where alien shadows prowl. Some band together in desperate groups, arming themselves with whatever they can find. Makeshift blades, stolen lasguns, even clubs of rusted iron. They fight to survive, not realizing that survival is impossible. Others turn to despair, ending their lives before the Tyranids can take them. Suicide spreads like plague, entire districts going silent overnight as the people decide death is kinder than what awaits. The priests preach louder, their sermons rising in desperation. They promise salvation, they demand faith, they scream of eternal reward in the Emperor's embrace. but their voices are drowned by the sounds of the swarm, the hiss of spore chimneys, the screeches of beasts, the pounding of claws against metal and stone. Those who once looked to the ecclesiarchy for hope now turn away, their faith broken by silence. The emperor does not answer. The saints do not intervene. There are only claws, only hunger, only death, and through it all, the great devourer watches. Though it has no eyes, no mind, as humanity understands, its presence is undeniable. It presses down like a weight upon every living soul, a hunger vast enough to blot out the stars. It is not evil, not in the way mortals think of evil. It does not hate, it does not rage, it does not seek vengeance. It only hungers. To resist it is to resist the tide, to scream at the ocean and expect it to part. There is no bargaining with it, no pleading, no mercy. There is only consumption, endless and absolute. As the third day ends and the fourth begins, the defenders know the truth. The world is already lost. It is no longer a question of victory, only of time. How long before the last gun falls silent? How long before the last scream fades into the choking fog? How long before the last drop of blood is absorbed into the great endless maw of the swarm? For those who live through these days, there is no hope, no light, no salvation. There is only the slow realization that they are standing inside the belly of a beast, and it is already closing its jaws. The world begins to unravel in ways that no human mind was ever meant to endure. By the fourth day of invasion, the Tyranids have not only conquered the land, they have begun to change it. The soil, once rich with minerals and cities, is blackened with alien growth. Spore chimneys rise like grotesque towers, belching out clouds of noxious vapor that turn skies into choking storms. The air is heavy, thick with the stink of bile and decay, and every breath carries pain. Civilians cough blood, soldiers struggle to breathe behind their masks, and children suffocate in the arms of mothers who can do nothing to help them. The world itself has become poison, reshaped into the perfect breeding ground for the swarm. The infestation spreads like wildfire. Forests twist into forests no longer. Trees become skeletal husks wrapped in sinew, their leaves consumed, their trunks hollowed out into spawning pods. Rivers turn black as alien organisms infest the water, every droplet teeming with microscopic predators that devour flesh. Oceans bubble with the writhing mass of newly born leviathans, their shadows visible beneath the waves as they grow fat on the planet's bounty. Nothing remains untouched. Not land, not water, not sky. The world is being rewritten, molecule by molecule, into something no longer human. For those who still live, survival has become an endless chain of nightmares. The hive cities, once strongholds, are now death traps. Buildings collapse under the weight of infestation, their skeletal frames swarmed by creatures that crawl through windows and vents with sickening ease. No home is safe, no sanctuary untouched. People hide in cellars, in sewers, in the ruins of churches, whispering prayers that go unanswered as alien claws scrape against doors and resin seals their exits shut. The sound of chittering fills every silence, a constant reminder that they are never truly alone. Soldiers remain at their posts, but their numbers dwindle with every passing hour. Companies that once numbered in the thousands are reduced to dozens. Tanks burn in the streets, their hulls melted by acid or torn apart by monstrous claws. Heavy weapons jam, their barrels clogged with resin, and crews die screaming as gaunts leap upon them from the shadows. The command structure collapses, officers dead or consumed, vox lines silent. Orders are replaced with instinct. Fire until your weapon dies, run until your legs fail, pray until your voice breaks. And yet, amidst the despair, humanity fights. The Imperial Guard does not surrender. Even as their lines fall, as the swarm presses closer, they fight with grim determination. Bayonets meet chitin, laser guns sear holes in alien flesh, grenades blast tunnels of gore through endless ranks of beasts. The soldiers know they are doomed, but still they fight, because that is what it means to serve the Imperium, to hold the line, no matter the cost, until the very end. Commissars execute the weak-willed, bolters roaring as they silence deserters with merciless efficiency. Their brutality is not cruelty, but necessity. To falter is to die. To break is to condemn all. And so, through fear, through discipline, through the stubborn will of humanity, the Guard continues to resist, even as the tide rises higher. Above them, the skies are lost. The last of the Imperial fighters are torn from the air, their wings shredded, their engines burning as they plummet into the ruins below. The swarm dominates the heavens, gargoyles blotting out the sun in shrieking clouds, their bodies diving like daggers into the hearts of defenders. Massive winged horrors circle overhead, shrieking in triumph as they rain acid and spore pods upon what little remains of human resistance. The people look up and see not hope, but a canopy of wings, an alien sky that promises nothing but death. In the midst of this terror, the civilians become prey in the truest sense. No longer just collateral damage, they are now the harvest. Tyrannid bioforms hunt them deliberately, not just to kill, but to capture, to drag screaming victims back into the fleshy hives that have begun to sprout across the cities. There people are entombed in resinous cocoons, their bodies slowly dissolved into nutrient slurry. The screams echo for days within these twisted nests, until they are silenced, replaced by the wet, sloshing sounds of digestion. The swarm is efficient. It wastes nothing. Every drop of blood, every scream, every life is another step toward the total consumption of the world. And, still, the shadow in the warp grows heavier. The psychic pressure builds, pressing down upon the planet like a suffocating blanket. Sanctioned Psykers lose their minds one by one, their powers flaring uncontrollably as the alien presence smothers their thoughts. Some burst into flame, their souls devoured in an instant. Others claw their eyes out, shrieking about the hunger pressing in from all sides. Even ordinary people feel it, the sense of being watched, hunted, consumed not just in body but in spirit. Dreams are plagued by visions of teeth, of endless chittering maws, of oceans of flesh grinding together. No one can escape it. Awake or asleep, the great devourer is always there. The ecclesiarchy tries to rally the people, their sermons growing more desperate with every hour. Priests scream from the pulpits of shattered cathedrals, waving relics and screaming of eternal salvation. Some ignite themselves in holy fire, their bodies blazing beacons of faith, demanding their followers to resist even as the swarm claws closer. But faith cannot silence the chittering, nor can relics halt the tide. Even the most devoted begin to waver, their prayers trembling, their voices breaking. Some turn to blasphemy, cursing the emperor for abandoning them. Others fall into madness, laughing and singing as they are dragged away, their minds broken by the weight of the inevitable. Amid the despair, there are moments of terrible courage. Families arm themselves with kitchen knives and hunting rifles, choosing to face the swarm rather than be devoured helplessly. Children throw stones at gaunts, buying their siblings seconds to flee before claws rip them apart. Soldiers charge into impossible odds, not for victory, but to buy one more minute for others to escape. These moments flicker like candles in the storm, bright but brief, swallowed by the tide. For every act of bravery, 100 deaths follow, 1,000 screams rise, and the swarm grows stronger. The world itself groans under the weight of consumption. Mountains are chewed into rubble, their stone digested by massive burrowing organisms. Plains vanish beneath carpets of crawling beasts, the soil stripped to nothing, replaced with resin and alien growth. The oceans churn as great tendrils descend from the skies, piercing the waves, draining them into orbit where hive ships await. The very core of the planet trembles as tunneling monstrosities hollow it out, consuming minerals and metals in vast, endless gulps. The planet is not simply conquered. It is being eaten alive, stripped of everything that once made it whole. The defenders cling to scraps of hope. A rumor spreads that reinforcements may arrive, that the fleet of the Imperium has not forgotten them. That perhaps a chapter of the Adeptus Astartes is already on its way, their drop pods screaming down from the skies to deliver salvation. Soldiers whisper of the Ultramarines, of the Blood Angels, of the Space Wolves, each man clinging to his own vision of heroes who may yet save them. But as the days stretch on and no salvation comes, the whispers grow quieter. The truth becomes undeniable. No one is coming. They have been cut off, left alone, abandoned to the swarm. In the face of this reality, madness takes root. Some civilians worship the Tyranids, falling to their knees in reverence to the endless hunger, begging to be consumed first so they may be freed from the torment of waiting. Others turn upon one another, clawing for scraps of food, murdering for a single breath of untainted air. Law vanishes, order collapses, and humanity devours itself even before the swarm can finish the work. In the end, it is not always the Tyranids who kill, but hunger, despair, and the darkness in human hearts. And all the while, the great devourer advances. Its presence is everywhere, in the air, in the soil, in the minds of the dying. It cannot be bargained with, it cannot be reasoned with, it cannot be stopped. The people of the planet understand now that they are not fighting an enemy. They are feeding one. Their blood, their flesh, their screams are not wasted. They are fuel, sustenance, the very lifeblood of a hunger that will never end. And as they look upon the ruins of their homes, the skies ablaze with fire, and the endless tide of claws sweeping closer, they know the truth. The world has already been devoured. They are simply the last to realize it. The world no longer belongs to its people. By the fifth day of invasion, the survivors begin to understand that the planet itself has slipped from their grasp. It is no longer their home. It is no longer even a battlefield. It has become a meal. The Tyranids do not see cities, rivers, or mountains. They see nutrients, biomass, and energy to be devoured. Every building is a carcass, every living being a ration. And as the days stretch into endless nights of terror, the reality begins to set in that there will be no escape, no reprieve, no salvation. The cities that still stand are little more than cages. Towers once proud and defiant, now twist under alien growth. The windows sealed with resin, the streets clogged with the carcasses of both human and alien alike. Fires burn unchecked, smoke rolling through the avenues like funeral shrouds, while above them the gargoyles screech their ownership of the skies. Spore pods rain down in constant rhythm, shaking the ground with each impact, splitting open to release new waves of predators. The civilians hide in basements, but the basements are no longer theirs. The walls themselves grow slick with alien resin, pulsing faintly like diseased organs. It is as though the swarm has begun to digest even the stone. For those who dare venture out, the world is unrecognizable. Roads have vanished beneath carpets of chittering organisms, their bodies flowing like rivers of living death. Forests have been stripped to skeletal remains, their trunks hollowed into feeding tubes, their roots infested with burrowers that writhe and squirm just beneath the soil. Oceans belch smoke as massive bioforms drink deep, their tendrils siphoning away water in streams that vanish into the sky. The atmosphere itself thickens, tainted by spores that clog lungs and seep into bloodstreams, killing slowly, suffocating silently. There is nowhere to go, nowhere untouched. The Imperial Guard fights on, but their strength is shattered. Regiments once numbering tens of thousands are reduced to mere handfuls. Their tanks burn, their artillery is silenced, and their commanders lie in pieces on the battlefield. Still, they cling to their training, to their discipline, to the unyielding demand of the Imperium that they fight until the last man falls. Trenches collapse under the weight of alien claws, and laser guns crack against the tide of chitin. Every hill becomes a grave, every crater a tomb. The ground is littered with the bodies of soldiers who never retreated, never broke, never stopped firing, until the swarm drowned them. Yet even the guard cannot stand forever. The commissar's pistols grow quiet, as there are no cowards left to shoot. The medics' hands tremble as their supplies run dry, and their patients outnumber them 100 to 1. Officers whisper into dead Vox units, still giving orders, though no one remains to hear them. The guard does not die quickly. It dies slowly, painfully, in fragments. Squad by squad, trench by trench, city block by city block, until nothing is left but isolated men and women, each fighting their last stand in silence. For the civilians, the torment is worse. The swarm no longer kills them quickly. Now it captures, cocooned in resin, entombed within the fleshy walls of alien hives, People scream until their voices break, their throats shredded raw as acid eats away at their flesh. Children vanish into the dark, dragged by chittering claws, their cries echoing until silence falls and only wet, gurgling sounds remain. Pregnant women are consumed alive, their unborn children digested before they ever draw breath. Families are torn apart, not just in death, but in digestion, their bodies separated into nutrient streams, their souls lost to the hunger that cannot be named. The Psykers suffer worst of all. Under the crushing weight of the shadow and the warp, their minds collapse. Some burst into flames, their bodies exploding in psychic implosions as their connection to the Imperium is strangled. Others claw their faces into ribbons, gibbering in tongues no human has ever spoken before, their madness spreading like infection to those who hear them. Still others become conduits, their bodies possessed by alien whispers, their mouths spilling out commands in chittering voices not their own. These poor souls are executed when discovered, their heads blown apart before the swarm can use them as weapons. But even death offers no peace, for their corpses are consumed like all the rest, their individuality erased in the endless tide. As the nightmare deepens, so too does despair. Hope, once fragile, is now extinguished. There are no more rumors of Astartes, no whispers of fleets breaking through. Everyone knows the truth. They have been abandoned. Not forgotten, for the Imperium forgets nothing, but written off. A sacrifice calculated and cold. Somewhere far away, an Imperial commander has already declared the world lost, and the survivors still screaming are nothing more than echoes, fading from the galactic record. The Imperium does not mourn. It does not rescue. It endures, and for this world, endurance means silence. Madness spreads among the survivors like plague. Some fall to their knees in worship of the swarm, whispering prayers not to the Emperor, but to the endless hunger. They beg to be consumed, to be freed from waiting. Others turn feral, murdering fellow refugees for scraps of food or even scraps of flesh. Cannibalism breaks out in the ruins, humans devouring humans while the swarm devours the planet. Priests burn themselves alive in futile sacrifice, their sermons drowned by the screeching of wings. Faith is not lost. It is twisted. Instead of salvation, it becomes fanaticism, hysteria, despair dressed in the robes of devotion. The world itself groans beneath the consumption. Mountains crumble as burrowers hollow them out. Oceans shrink, their depths drained into orbiting hive ships. Valleys collapse into pits of bile where digestion pools bubble and hiss. Even the core of the planet is not safe. Vast creatures tunnel deep into its heart, draining heat and minerals, slowly gutting the very bones of the world. The planet dies not with a bang, but with a whimper, stripped piece by piece, hollowed out until all that remains is an empty husk, drifting silently in space. Through all of this, the Tyranids remain relentless. They do not pause, they do not falter, they do not hesitate. Their hunger is perfect, their efficiency absolute. They are not sadistic, for they do not know cruelty. They are not merciful, for they do not know pity. They are only hunger, endless and all-consuming. And against that hunger, nothing can stand. Not men, not armies, not gods. For the survivors who remain, every hour is agony. Some still fight, their weapons clutched in trembling hands, firing into the darkness until the darkness swallows them whole. Others cower in silence, hoping to be overlooked, though they know in their hearts that nothing is overlooked. The swarm sees all, smells all, tastes all. There is no hiding, no escaping. Every scream, every heartbeat, every breath is marked. The silence of the planet deepens. Fox signals vanish, lights extinguish. Cities fall still, their ruins choked with resin and ash. The world is already gone. It breathes its last in silence, its death cry swallowed by the swarm. And as the survivors look upon the skies blazing with fire, they understand at last that they are not witnessing a battle. They are witnessing a feast, and the great devourer never leaves scraps. The sixth day dawns without a sun. The skies are not blue nor gray, but a sickly shade of green-black, swollen with clouds of spores so thick that the heavens are blotted out. What little light filters through is poisonous, staining everything in hues of decay. For the survivors, the day has no meaning anymore. Morning and night blur together in a single, unending nightmare. The planet's cycle continues, but its people no longer live in rhythm with it. They live in the rhythm of screams, of gunfire, of the screeching calls of predators in the air. By now, the tyrannid presence is absolute. The invasion is no longer an assault, it is digestion. Where once the swarm had descended with fury, now it spreads with inevitability. Entire regions are draped in living tissue, the ground itself thick with pulsating, alien growth that beats like a heart beneath the soil. Tendrils crawl up the ruins of cathedrals, their bells silenced by fleshy vines that twist through shattered windows. Hives form in the carcasses of cities, their spires bent into grotesque towers, dripping resin like saliva from diseased jaws. The world is not just consumed, it is remade into something alien, unholy, alive in ways it was never meant to be. Those who wander the wastes do not recognize their home. Rivers boil with toxins, their waters reduced to sludge that steams beneath spore-choked skies. Forests have become skeletal, stripped bare, and gnawed upon until only splintered husks remain, their roots throbbing with parasitic worms that burrow deep, spreading alien veins into the crust of the earth. Oceans bubble as massive feeder organisms siphon away their depths, gorging themselves until the seas retreat from the shore, exposing beaches littered with the bones of things that never should have walked upon them. The survivors who remain hidden in cellars or underground shelters face torments of their own. The air grows heavier each day, the spores clogging their lungs, making each breath a labor. Coughing fits rack the old and young alike, blood flecking their lips as their bodies succumb to unseen toxins. Food is long gone. People gnaw on leather, on scraps of cloth, even on each other when desperation conquers humanity. Madness blooms faster than hunger. Mothers clutch dead children, whispering lullabies to corpses. Fathers tear at the walls until their fingernails split, desperate for escape that does not exist. And in the shadows, eyes watch. Not the eyes of fellow humans, but of the creatures that seep into every hiding place, waiting for the last shreds of resistance to collapse. The Imperial Guard is no longer a force. What remains of them are scattered cells of soldiers, gaunt and filthy, their uniforms torn and smeared with ichor. They fight on instinct, like wolves with broken legs, snarling even as death closes in. Voxcasters sputter silence. Commanders are long dead or worse, absorbed into the biomass of the swarm. Still, when the Xenos descend, the guardsmen raise their lasguns. They fire until their power packs die, then swing their rifles as clubs until the butts shatter. Some carve the Aquila into their flesh before charging, screaming praises to the Emperor as the horde swallows them whole. These last acts are not victories, but gestures. They die not to win, but to spite the endless hunger, to leave behind fragments of defiance in a galaxy that will never know they fought. Elsewhere, the tyrannid organisms grow bolder, stranger, more grotesque. Bioforms never catalogued by the Imperium emerge from the digestion pools, born directly from the stolen biomass of the planet. Creatures with claws the size of scythes, wings like torn banners, and jaws that could shear a man in half in a single bite stalk the ruins. Each new horror is crafted not at random, but in response. If humans build barricades, beasts emerge with acid to dissolve them. If guardsmen dig trenches, burrowers appear to flood them with crawling death. If the air is contested, winged predators descend in numbers so great they darken the sky. It is war not just fought, but evolved in real time. Humanity bleeds, and the swarm adapts, feeding on every mistake, every breath, every heartbeat. Within the few strongholds that remain, whispers of betrayal emerge. Some whisper of secret evacuation ships, of nobles and highborn escaping to orbit while the masses are left to die. Riots erupt in bunkers as hope turns to rage, civilians tearing each other apart in blind desperation for escape that never comes. The priests try to hold order, but even their voices falter. Some continue to preach the Emperor's salvation, screaming until they are dragged away by mobs. Others falter, their faith shattering under the weight of abandonment. A few even kneel before the alien growths, whispering prayers to the devouring swarm, believing consumption is salvation. Such heresy is met with bullets, where possible, but more often it spreads unchecked, the broken leading the desperate into alien arms. In the void above, the Hive Fleet looms, silent and infinite. The bioships circle like vultures, their maws gaping as they siphon the planet's atmosphere, its oceans, its very life force. They are not ships in any human sense. They are predators, alive and hungry, their hulls beating with veins and organs. Tentacles plunge into the atmosphere, drawing energy, siphoning resources, stripping the world to its marrow. The stars are gone, hidden behind the vast, fleshy curtain of the fleet. To the survivors below, the heavens themselves seem to lean down to consume them. It is not death alone that terrifies the survivors. It is the slow erasure of everything that ever was. Names are forgotten. Families vanish without record. Cities that once held billions crumble into resinous tombs, their histories digested along with their people. Monuments topple. Libraries burn. Data archives are absorbed into the slurry of biomass. A world with 10,000 years of culture is reduced to raw matter in less than 10 days. Nothing remains. Nothing is remembered. Nothing endures, and yet, through all of this, some cling stubbornly to the illusion of hope. A guardsman still tapes a broken Aquila to his chest before battle. A mother still tells her children that angels will come, that the emperor will not abandon them. A priest still shouts sermons over the shrieks of death, his voice drowned, but not silenced. These small acts do not change the outcome, but they are a defiance that the swarm cannot understand. The Tyranids devour flesh, but not meaning. To the last breath, some humans refuse to surrender meaning, even if the galaxy will never know it. As the swarm grows heavier, thicker, louder, the ground itself begins to scream. Fissures split the earth as massive digestion pools expand, belching steam and reeking of bile. The sound is like an endless heartbeat pounding in the bones of those who remain. The planet is not dying quietly. It is thrashing, howling in geological agony as it is hollowed from the inside. Volcanoes spew not magma, but streams of corrupted fluid as the swarm bends nature itself to its consumption. Storms whip across the skies, hurricanes of spores swirling with lightning that flashes green and purple, unnatural and wrong. The planet is convulsing, and every soul upon it convulses with it. The sixth day closes in silence. Not peace, not reprieve, but silence. Where once the skies rang with gunfire and screams, now there is only the droning hum of the swarm. It is the sound of inevitability, of hunger fulfilled, of a world slipping into the maw of oblivion. For those who survive, it is worse than the screams. It is proof that resistance has ended, proof that the world is already lost. And in the darkness of that silence, they know tomorrow will be worse. On the seventh day, the planet itself begins to betray its people. The ground shifts and buckles, not with tectonic unrest, but with a living pulse. Entire districts collapse as if the soil beneath them has turned to liquid. In truth, it has. The Tyranid digestion pools spread like a disease, their tendrils reaching deeper, weaving alien veins into the bedrock. The surface groans, cracking under the strain as though the planet itself resents its continued existence. For those who cling to survival, every step becomes a gamble. One moment you stand on stone, the next it crumbles away into a churning pit of acid. Your body stripped to bone in seconds before even the chance to scream. The survivors are fewer now, scattered pockets of hollow-eyed ghosts who once called themselves human. In the ruins of a manufactorum, families cling together in the shadows, their skin raw from spores, their stomachs hollow from starvation. They have no weapons left, no means of resistance, only prayers and whispers of miracles. Some believe that the angels of death, the space marines, will descend to save them. They tell themselves that the emperor cannot possibly allow them to vanish so utterly. But the silence in the skies tells another story. The heavens remain shrouded, not by drop pods or thunderhawks, but by the vast organic silhouettes of Tyranid bioships. The angels are not coming. They never were. In the darkness, madness grows. In the manufactorum's depths, a man carves symbols into his skin with broken shards of glass, believing it will make him invisible to the swarm. A mother smothers her own infant to stop its cries, sobbing silently as she does. Another survivor begins to eat the flesh of his dead companion, justifying the act as a sacrifice to the emperor. When others discover him, they tear him apart in a frenzy, not of outrage, but of hunger. The Tyranids do not need to consume them directly. The humans consume themselves. Above ground, the swarm mutates again. New horrors crawl from the digestion pits, birthed from the remains of the very world they consume. Towering beasts with carapaces like black iron stride through ruined avenues, their claws scything through the last bastions of defense. Their screeches reverberate across the ruins, echoing like a funeral dirge through streets once filled with markets and laughter. Smaller creatures, gaunts, and gargoyles flood the ruins in tides, hunting not for battle, but for culling. They do not fight their prey. They harvest it. Those who fall are not left to rot. They are dragged screaming into the pools to be rendered into nutrient slurry. Every life, every scream, every fragment of flesh serves the hive. Nothing is wasted. In the heart of a ruined cathedral, a priest still preaches. His voice is ragged, broken, but he continues to shout prayers to the emperor as his flock diminishes by the hour. His altar is gone, replaced by a makeshift pyre of rotting corpses, which he calls a holy flame. He claims that those who die here in faith will ascend to Terra's golden halls. His congregation is silent, their faces gaunt, their eyes glazed with despair. Some believe, others merely sit in stillness, waiting to die. When the Tyranids arrive, as they always do, the priest does not flee. He raises his arms, shouting praises, and is split apart by a lash of alien talons. His followers scatter, trampled, crushed, devoured. The pyre is pulled down, and even the flames are smothered by resinous growth. The cathedral, once a sanctuary, becomes just another feeding pit. By now the hive mind's presence is unbearable. It is not merely an invasion of flesh, but of thought. Survivors hear whispers in their dreams, hisses that slither into their minds. Some wake screaming, clawing at their skulls as though trying to dig the voices out. Others simply walk into the open, arms wide, welcoming the swarm with vacant smiles. There are no chains on them, no claws dragging them forward, only the compulsion of a mind vaster than their own. The Tyranids do not enslave with metal shackles. They enslave with inevitability. Resistance becomes not just futile, but impossible. For the few remaining guardsmen, the seventh day is the end of cohesion. What had once been squads is now only pairs, or single men wandering the wastes with broken laser guns and cracked helmets. Their rations are gone, their munitions spent. Yet they still fight, even when fighting means little more than hurling rocks at the swarm or stabbing with bayonets until the steel bends. They fight because surrender is not in their vocabulary, because they were born to obey orders, even when no orders remain. Some tape frag grenades to their chests and charge into the hordes, exploding in showers of gore that barely slow the advance. Others stand tall, bellowing battle hymns until they are silenced mid-verse by claws through their lungs. None of them survive the day, yet none of them give in quietly. Their deaths are ugly, meaningless in the grand scheme, but they are theirs. In the ruins of the governor's palace, silence reigns. The nobles are long dead, their golden halls stripped of ornament and consumed by alien growth. Yet their bones remain, twisted into grotesque thrones by the creeping resin, their eyeless skulls staring forever at the monsters that now rule their halls. To the Tyranids, they were no different than peasants, merely flesh, merely fuel. But the imagery lingers. The rulers of the planet reduced to decorations, their legacy erased in less than a week. The world's hierarchy is dissolved, its order meaningless before the hunger of the great devourer. The seventh night falls heavy. The stars are still absent, replaced by the heaving mass of the hive fleet above. The swarm moves with the patience of a predator, certain of victory. They do not rush. They do not fear resistance. The humans are broken, scattered, reduced to animals scratching at the dirt. The world is already theirs. Yet still the feeding continues, as methodical as it is merciless. Spore chimneys rise higher, belching thick plumes of toxins into the skies, choking out the last remnants of breathable air. Feeder organisms drill into the crust, drawing nutrients and metals alike into the swarm's vast system. What is not useful is discarded, mountains of slag and waste piled high beside rivers of alien bile. The world is no longer itself. It is a corpse being methodically stripped to bone. In the shadows, a handful of survivors still cling to hope. They whisper of astropaths, of distress signals that might still have reached the Imperium. They believe that the Emperor's warriors will arrive at the last possible moment as saviors from the void. But their hope is hollow, a desperate lie told to keep despair at bay. The Imperium does not save worlds like this. It abandons them. And even if a fleet did arrive, what could it do against the endless swarm above? To believe is to prolong suffering. To accept the truth is to embrace despair. Both choices end in death. The swarm does not stop. It does not sleep. Through the night it harvests, consumes, digests. Every scream is silenced, every fire extinguished, every heartbeat devoured. By dawn, another city lies empty. By midday, another region collapses into a pit of biomass. By dusk, the world is quieter still. The humans are nearly gone. The planet is nearly gone. What remains is not a war zone, but a carcass. And still the swarm feeds, tireless, endless, inevitable. On the seventh day, the world dies a second death, not of its body, but of its spirit. No prayers remain. No banners wave. No resistance rises. Only the swarm and the silence that follows it. By the eighth day, the world is unrecognizable. Where once there had been forests, mountains, seas, and cities, there is only a patchwork of alien growth. The soil has darkened into a pulsing membrane, slick with fluids that seep into the ground. Great spore chimneys rise like skeletal towers, belching clouds that blot out the already ashen skies. The horizon, once marked by the silhouettes of cathedrals and hive spires, is now a jagged line of organic fortresses built from chitin and bone. The planet is no longer a home. It has become part of the swarm. The few survivors who remain crawl through this alien landscape like insects in their own world. Their minds reel with exhaustion, their bodies brittle from hunger and exposure. Every breath feels poisoned, every step uncertain. They are not people anymore, not in the way they once were. They are shadows, half-dead wretches who cling to the idea of life while everything around them screams death. When they look to the skies, they see not stars, but the vast underbellies of the tyrannid bioships, bloated silhouettes that eclipse hope itself. Their minds cannot fathom the enormity. They only know that there is no escape. The predators that stalk the ruins grow bolder. Lictors, once subtle hunters, now move openly, their carapace gleaming wet with gore as they drag prey into the shadows. Rippers swarm over corpses before they even hit the ground, tearing flesh from bone with mindless hunger. Winged gargoyles perch atop ruined spires, watching, waiting for the slightest motion. For survivors, silence is death. Sound is death. Movement is death. Even staying still invites doom, for the swarm has no need to rush. It finds all prey eventually, yet in some desperation ignites madness into action. A handful of guardsmen, what little remains of their fractured regiments, gather for one final act. Their weapons are shattered relics, their munitions long spent, but they lash bayonets to broken rifles, sharpen metal scraps, and prepare themselves. They know they cannot win. They know their blood will be spilled in moments. But they march anyway, hollow voices rising into a fractured hymn of the Emperor's name. They do not march toward the swarm in hopes of victory, but in hopes of defiance. They will not die in silence. Their charge is short-lived, ending in an eruption of claws and ichor as the swarm engulfs them, yet their cries echo for a moment, carried on the toxic wind, a fleeting reminder that humanity once stood here. The civilians left behind sink deeper into despair. In the ruins of hab-blocks, children with sunken eyes stare vacantly, too weak to cry. Mothers cradle them like broken dolls, whispering lullabies into ears that no longer listen. Old men carve sigils of the imperial Aquila into stone and rubble, as if scratching the mark of the Emperor into the planet itself will anchor him here, will force him to look upon them. But the symbols are soon covered in creeping alien resin, absorbed into the hive's structure, erased like everything else. And still, the hive mind presses. Its psychic weight crushes the spirit of the survivors. The whispers that once slithered into dreams now scream constantly in the backs of their skulls. The voice is not words, but hunger, a gnawing emptiness that devours thought. Those who resist bleed from their noses and eyes. Those who give in walk willingly into the open, stripped naked by their own hands, offering themselves as tribute. They are torn apart immediately, consumed without ceremony, their flesh bubbling into the alien landscape. The hive accepts all gifts. On the edges of the great digestion pools, monstrosities rise. They are not beasts that had existed before. They are hybrids, shaped by the flesh of this world. One has the twisted visage of a horse, its flesh melted into a tyrannid frame, galloping on too many legs. Another carries the remnants of imperial armor in its carapace, its helm fused grotesquely into a new skull. The swarm consumes not only flesh, but identity, remaking the world in its image. To the hive mind, nothing is sacred. Everything is raw material. In a shattered outpost bunker, an astropath still breathes. His mind has been broken for days, but his body twitches with the remnants of psychic energy. His eyes are blind sockets, burned by the effort of sending a last plea into the void. Whether the Imperium received it, none will ever know. Perhaps his cry was lost in the warp, drowned by the shadows of the Tyranids. Perhaps it reached Terra, where it was cast aside as one more tragedy among countless. It does not matter. He dies alone, his body convulsing as the hive mind crushes what remains of his soul. His death is not marked, not mourned. By nightfall the world glows faintly in the dark. The spore chimneys burn like torches, rivers of bile shimmer with phosphorescent hues, and the surface thrums with alien rhythm. For the first time, there is no distinction between day and night. The planet is lit by its own dying. Survivors huddle in caves, in sewers, in ruins, but their hiding places grow fewer. One by one they vanish. Some are dragged screaming into the pools, others simply do not return from foraging. By the dawn of the 9th day, there will be fewer still. There are no armies left. No defenses, no hope. The Imperium has turned its face away, the Emperor silent in his throne. The swarm has claimed victory, though it never sought it in the human sense. There is no triumph for the Tyranids, no celebration. There is only feeding, a hunger that stretches across stars, that cares nothing for prayers, for banners, for names. The humans die not as martyrs or heroes, but as fodder, their memory extinguished as quickly as their flesh. And so the 8th day ends, not with a battle, not with a miracle, but with silence broken only by the churning of digestion pools and the endless hiss of alien growth. The world has been forgotten already, its screams absorbed into the great void of the Tyranids' hunger. On the 9th day, the survivors begin to understand the truth, not through logic or reason, but through the primal recognition of extinction. The world is no longer theirs. The cities, the forests, the oceans, even the air itself, all belong to something else now. Humanity exists here only as prey, lingering remnants waiting to be harvested. The people who still live know this deep in their bones, even if they refuse to say it aloud. They are ghosts, haunting a corpse that does not yet realize it has died. The once proud hive cities have been reduced to jagged alien landscapes. Spires of black chitin and bone pierce the skies where once cathedrals had reached for the emperor. Streets that once bustled with industry and labor are now rivers of ichor, flowing toward digestion pools like veins, pumping lifeblood into a heart. Every building is draped in sinew and resin, each window a hollow eye socket watching with unseen hunger. The architecture of mankind has been overwritten by the hive's living structures, reshaped without hesitation or pity. For the survivors, existence becomes a cycle of horror. In the mornings, those who remain wake to the sound of screams carried on the wind. They know the screams are real, not imagined. Someone is always being taken. Sometimes it is a neighbor. Sometimes it is a stranger. Sometimes it is a friend who had shared food the night before. At night, they sleep in terror, though sleep brings no respite. only nightmares shaped by the psychic echoes of the swarm. They dream of teeth, claws, and endless oceans of flesh, and when they wake, they cannot tell whether the dream has ended or whether they are still within it. The hive mind presses ever tighter, an invisible weight pressing down upon every mind. It does not need to kill swiftly. It breaks will first, leaving the body alive but empty. Survivors collapse into sobbing husks, their minds hollowed out by despair. Some walk willingly into the open, begging the swarm to take them. The Tyranids oblige always. Flesh is flesh. It is during this time that strange phenomena emerge. Not all who fall to the psychic pressure die immediately. Some are twisted, reshaped before death, their bodies writhing with grotesque transformations. A man hiding in the ruins clutches his stomach as his flesh boils, his veins bulging with alien ichor until his skin bursts, releasing parasitic forms that scatter into the hive's biomass. A child's laughter turns to a scream as her mouth elongates unnaturally, fusing into a carapace-like growth before the swarm arrives to claim her. The hive is experimenting, using even the living as raw material for its endless evolution. The air itself grows poisonous. The spore chimneys pump toxins into every corner of the atmosphere, reducing visibility to a haze of sickly yellow-green. Breathing feels like inhaling liquid acid. Survivors cough blood, their lungs eroded by spores, their eyes burning constantly. Some tie scraps of cloth across their mouths, but it offers little protection. Death comes slower this way, a prolonged suffocation. The Tyranids do not care. Whether death takes minutes or hours, the outcome is the same. Yet there are still those who cling to defiance, though their resistance is nothing but whispers in the face of the storm. A lone guardsman, his lasgun long empty, stands atop the ruins of a hab block and screams a challenge into the sky. He curses the Tyranids, curses the Imperium that abandoned him, curses the Emperor himself. His words are drowned out by the shriek of gargoyles diving from the heavens. His body is shredded before his voice fades, his blood steaming on the alien ground. But for one brief instant, he was more than prey. He was a man who defied the inevitable. Elsewhere, an ecclesiarch preaches to a handful of hollow-eyed followers. His voice is cracked, his robes torn and soiled, but he still proclaims faith in the Emperor. He promises salvation, deliverance, a miracle, waiting just beyond the horizon. His words tremble with desperation, but the faithful cling to them anyway, because faith is all they have left. But when the spore chimneys erupt nearby and a brood of hormagaunts charges, the preacher does not flee. He raises his arms to the heavens, shouting prayers until he is consumed. The faithful scatter, but they too are hunted down and devoured. Their faith dies with them, buried in silence beneath the swarm's endless chittering. The digestion pools grow vast, covering miles of terrain, shimmering with sickly bioluminescence as corpses dissolve into nutrient slurry. Within them, bones rise to the surface before being pulled under by tendrils. The pools bubble with a constant hiss, releasing foul mists that choke everything nearby. Birds, insects, animals, none are left. Only the Tyranids remain, feasting without end. The pools are not just graves. They are wombs birthing new monstrosities, each more horrific than the last. What emerges from the pools is not random. It is refinement. The swarm is perfecting itself, using this world as its crucible. For those still alive, madness is more dangerous than starvation. People turn on each other in desperation. A mother smothers her child to stop its cries from drawing attention. Two men stab each other over the corpse of a rat. A group of survivors burn another alive, convinced his twitching body has already been corrupted by the swarm. Humanity devours itself even as the Tyranids devour the world. The line between monster and man blurs until there is no difference. Above, the great bioships loom ever closer. Their vast shadows cover continents, their tendrils sinking deeper into the planet's crust. The sky itself feels alive, as if the world is being swallowed by a mouth that stretches from horizon to horizon. The survivors who look up cannot comprehend it. Their minds simply break. Some laugh hysterically until they choke. Others claw at their eyes, trying to tear away the sight. To see the bioships is to know the truth. The planet is already dead. It only breathes because the swarm has not yet finished eating, and through it all, The hive mind pulses with hunger. Its psychic presence grows unbearable, like a constant scream pressing into every mind. The survivors hear it in every heartbeat, every breath, every shadow. It whispers not words, but a demand. Yield, feed, surrender. Resistance is meaningless. Defiance is futile. The hive will not be denied. By the end of the 9th day, the planet's surface is unrecognizable. It is no longer a world. It is a feeding ground, a biomass processing center, a carcass being stripped to the bone. Humanity has no place here anymore. The last survivors cower in silence, waiting for the inevitable. Some hope for death to come quickly. Others pray for the impossible, that the Imperium will return with fire and vengeance. But the Imperium does not come. The Emperor does not answer. Only the swarm remains vast, endless, and eternal. The 9th day does not end with hope. It does not end with faith. It ends with the silence of extinction, broken only by the sound of the world itself being digested. The people who once lived here are gone in all but name, reduced to echoes, swallowed by the great devourer. The final days of the world come not with fire, not with glory, but with silence. By now there are no armies left to resist, no cities left to defend, no voices left to cry for salvation. What remains is the husk of a planet, its surface stripped bare, its oceans drained into digestion pools, its skies choked with smoke and spores. The Tyranids have not only conquered, they have consumed. This is no occupation. It is annihilation. The land is unrecognizable. Where once grasslands stretched across wide plains, now there is only a wasteland of skeletal husks and blackened ichor. Mountains stand hollowed, their stone marrow harvested for minerals. Rivers no longer flow with water, but with acidic runoff, blood mixed with alien bile, streaming toward the great consumption pits. Forests are gone entirely, their wood long dissolved, their roots stripped of nutrients. The ground itself looks chewed, gnawed upon by an invisible mouth too vast for human minds to comprehend. Above, the bioships hang in orbit, their vast carapaces glistening with absorbed moisture, their tendrils drinking greedily from the world below. They are not vessels in the human sense. They are predators, colossal organisms floating like titanic leviathans in the void. Each one groans and flexes as though alive, their maws opening to receive the nutrient slurry pumped from the surface. The planet's lifeblood flows upward into the abyss of the stars, never to return. For the few survivors that remain, if they can even be called survivors, the end is almost serene. Madness has long since burned away their fear. Hunger has eaten away their strength. They no longer flee, no longer resist. They sit among the ruins and wait, as docile as cattle, too broken to fight, too hollow to hope. When the swarm finds them, they do not scream. They do not run. They simply close their eyes and let themselves be taken, bodies dissolving into the endless cycle of consumption. They are not mourned. Their names are not remembered. They are not even considered prey. They are biomass, as meaningless as grass before the scythe. The psychic pressure of the hive mind is unbearable now, pressing down like a storm that never ends. Even the strongest-willed break beneath it. There is no individuality left, no thoughts that belong to anyone but the swarm. It does not speak in words, but its message is absolute. The world is already gone. There is no future here, only the eternal hunger. By the 10th day, the digestion pools have swelled to cover entire regions. Oceans themselves are reduced to frothing cauldrons of alien fluid, the water stripped of life, and then itself drained for sustenance. Great spore chimneys erupt constantly, belching clouds of toxin and biomass into the atmosphere, creating a canopy of decay that stretches across the entire sky. The sun is hidden forever, its light smothered by the veil of consumption. To the few eyes left alive, the heavens look less like a sky and more like the inside of some monstrous stomach closing in upon them. Occasionally, figures wander the wastelands. Not human, not fully alien, but something in between. They are the unlucky ones who were caught, twisted, reshaped into abominations of flesh and carapace. Some drag themselves across the ground, half their bodies fused with alien tissue. Others shamble aimlessly, their skin translucent, their eyes blank. These are not soldiers. They are mistakes, experiments abandoned once their usefulness ended. The hive wastes nothing, but even its imperfect creations serve some purpose, if not as weapons, then as food. Everywhere the world itself cries out in its death throes. Earthquakes tear through continents as tyrannid biotendrils burrow deep into the core, stripping the planet of heat and minerals. Volcanoes erupt, not from natural processes, but from the hive's intrusion into the mantle. The ground splits open, spewing forth rivers of molten rock, only to be swiftly cooled and absorbed by living tyrannid structures that thrive even on fire. The planet is being hollowed out, reduced to a husk from the inside out, and yet, for all this destruction, the tyrannids are calm, methodical. They are not frenzied, not chaotic. They devour with the precision of inevitability. To watch them feed is to understand the futility of resistance. They are not malicious. They are not cruel. They are simply hunger given form. They consume because it is what they are. To ask why the swarm devours is as meaningless as asking why fire burns. It is their nature, and no plea, no resistance, no faith can alter it. In orbit, the bioships pulse with new life. From within their cavernous wombs, fresh broods are spawned, larger, stronger, more perfect than those that came before. Warriors bred from the biomass of this very planet crawl forth, their carapaces glistening, their claws sharpened. They are not the same as the creatures that descended days earlier. They are better, refined by the essence of this world. The swarm learns. The swarm improves. Every death here, every scream, every ounce of biomass has been a step toward this new perfection. In the final hours, the last remnants of human resistance dissolve. There are no more bastions, no more hidden bunkers, no more whispered prayers in the dark. Those who survive are little more than shadows, waiting to be claimed. And when they are gone, there is nothing left to mark that humanity ever existed here. The names of its cities, the histories of its people, the glories of its past, all erased. The Imperium will not mourn it. At best, it will be noted as a loss in a ledger, another world consumed, another candle snuffed out in the endless night, and then, finally, the swarm departs. The bioships retract their tendrils. The digestion pools dry, their contents siphoned away into orbit. The spore chimneys collapse, leaving behind scars across the land. The tyrannid organisms that once swarmed the surface are recalled, pulled upward into the sky, dissolving into the greater whole. Within hours, the skies clear. The world falls silent. The tyrannids leave nothing behind, not even their own spore. They are gone, as if they were never there at all. But what remains is not a world. It is a husk, a barren rock stripped of atmosphere, water, and life. Its oceans are dry basins. Its forests are ash. Its cities are craters. Its mountains are hollow shells. Nothing stirs here, nothing breathes, nothing grows. The silence is total. A planet has been devoured, its essence carried away into the abyss, fueling the eternal hunger of the swarm. The galaxy will never know its name again. To the Imperium, it will be a cautionary tale whispered in the dark, a reminder of what happens when the great devourer comes. To the survivors of other worlds, it is a nightmare on the horizon, a fate they pray will not come for them. But the hive is endless, and prayer is useless. The swarm will return, if not tomorrow, then the next day, the next year, the next century. Hunger has no end, and the galaxy is filled with food. This is the fate of every world touched by the tyrannids. This is the horror that awaits when the great devourer comes. Not war, not conquest, not slavery, only silence. The silence of extinction, echoing forever across the stars.